Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is your Daily News Brief brought to you by thedailysheeple.com. Our first story, and this broke on Friday, and I feel it necessary to really get into this because this has some major implications as far as how things go post-election. And SHTFplan.com broke the story. Unrest and martial law, leaked military drill anticipates a no rule of law scenario after election results. I'm going to clarify that a little bit. The government and the powers that shouldn't be often do not like it when certain terms go mainstream, a la martial law. Now, there have been internet independent media people, like, say, on YouTube, Dabu77, who have had video given to him from people, say, in Boston, Massachusetts here recently, where National Guard troops are doing a live drill, and it looks like some sort of decon station that they're using. And there's tanks, literal like M1 Abrams tanks in Boston for a drill. Now, I don't know about you, but I have yet to see, outside of, say, a parade in Moscow or North Korea, where you have tanks being used in any sort of drill for any sort of purpose, outside of, say, like an air show or a military show on a base, certainly not in a city. So I found that kind of interesting. But SHTF Plan and the Daily Sheeple both received tips through this back channel. And according to this article, the implications are astounding. Let me get into it. It said if there's any truth to it, the 2016 election could be the kickoff of total tyranny. According to an unnamed source who has provided accurate intel in the past, an unannounced military drill is scheduled to take place during a period leading up to the election and throughout the month thereafter. It appears that the system is gearing up to handle outbreaks of violence, chaotic rallies at poll stations, and the possibility that the people of the United States may become very dissatisfied with the outcome by using military force and martial law. Let me stop there. If Trump wins and Hillary gets into office, chances are there's going to be a lot of election fraud that takes place. And when that happens and it's exposed, there are going to be a lot of angry people. If Donald Trump wins, you're going to have a bunch of riots in the streets and a bunch of angry people, because that is the modus operandi of the Soros groups and those that want the globalist structure to remain in place. So it doesn't matter who wins, because you're going to have a section of the populace that are going to be pissed off either for right reasons or for wrong reasons. It doesn't matter. It's going to happen, much like the Black Lives Matter protests. You know, that's not to say that racism doesn't take place and doesn't exist in America, because to say it doesn't is absolutely short-sighted and wrong. But you can't tell me that Black Lives Matter isn't or is an organization that just has the best interest of every African American at heart. Of course not. It may have started that way, just like the Ron Paul revolution started that way. And as soon as something becomes popular, it gets hijacked. It gets hijacked from within, and then it gets turned against the people. It happens every time. So there's some truth here in that no matter who wins, there's going to be a section of the populace that's going to be pissed. The drill could, of course, go live at any time. Homeland Security and the military are prepared to contend with a period of unrest and restore order to a divided and broken country, regardless of whether people like their new leader or not. And as you know, DHS is monitoring the elections. And let me also key everybody in on this. The Pentagon, if you remember about a month ago, the Pentagon said that there was going to be, they're going to be involved in the elections. Why would the Pentagon want to be involved? Oh, because Russia Russia's going to come and hack it. Yeah, right. What happened in 2004 and the 2000 elections when Bev Harris exposed the diabolical voting machines? Was it Russia then? How about when Clint Curtis went before, I think it was the Ohio or the Florida state legislature, and you can find this on YouTube, and told them, hey, I got paid to do this. I got paid to flip the elections. He was a programmer. Told it right to the state legislature. Was that Russia? You can't buy in to the rhetoric. We have to go through that, see through the smokescreen, and get to where the truth lies. Now, I will say this. This source has been credible in the past, and I believe he's credible now. And this is what was sent to the Daily Sheeple and to an SHTF plan. Let me tell you. It says, hi, guys. I got some gouge from a former military colleague who's in contact with active duty personnel, and he received an email about this upcoming drill. Now, he wanted confirmation. He's like, man, I don't know if this is true, but I'm going to throw it out there. Please get it out because we need to confirm this. So it's supposed to start October 30th and go to about 30 days after the election. The suspected region is the Northeast region, or FEMA Region 3, specifically New York. Phase 1, Enroll, NROL, that's an acronym for No Rule of Law. It's the first phase of a 3-phase drill. This drill involves combat arms in metro areas, active and reserve. Source says active duty and reserve service members are being vaccinated as if they were being deployed in theater. Now, let me say this. For drill purposes, you never get vaccinated. I was active duty. I know many people that have been active duty. We've taken part in drills, and I can tell you for a fact that the only time we got vaccinated was prior to deployment. So why are they getting vaccinated now? That's a question we have to ask. Phase 2 is LROL, or Limited Rule of Law, and it's with military in coordination with FEMA, consolidating resources, controlling the water supply, and handing out resources to the public as needed. Phase 3, AROL. This is the new acronym for martial law. It stands for Authoritarian Rule of Law. Now, this new acronym is very important because martial law has really got out there, and a lot of people are pushing it, both independent and mainstream media. And, of course, when you have martial law, you have curfew, you have restricted movements, and total control of society. Now, in a martial law scenario, especially if you have riots, a lot of people say, well, how are they going to do that? They can't do that. But they can most certainly do that, and it's very simple. The first thing and only thing you have to do is control the population centers. In order to do that, you just lock down all inbound and outbound routes. You lay siege, and you starve people out. And eventually what's going to happen is people are going to end up turning and killing one another, stealing each other's things, until the people that are left are going to crawl on their hands and knees and be willing slaves. And then they'll get shipped to FEMA camps or whatever, and they'll be totally under control. You see, it takes very few resources to actually do that in that sort of scenario. Now, at this time, information concerning a drill has not been confirmed, nor has it been announced publicly. And that's very important. So we need people out there to do some digging and come forward if you know anything. However, there's reason to believe that the federal government is preparing for all-out contingencies, including those that might lead to violence or civil unrest after the election. With Donald Trump openly calling the election rigged, there's reason to think that the public may not accept a Hillary win, particularly if any clear evidence exists that the vote is rigged or it's poorly counted. But same thing goes on the other side. Now, it's important to note that this source also broke the existence of a city, a mock city that was built on Fort Chaffee, Arkansas, which is it's an army base down in Arkansas called Carness Village. And if you go to shtfplan.com and check this article out, you'll see some pictures that this source put out there for people to see. And this is one of many mock cities that are out there that are there specifically to train for civil unrest or an A-roll situation in the United States. Although they'll tell you that it's for overseas. Look at the architecture and think about this too. I asked a operator who used to work with Spec War about the existence of this, and he actually confirmed that Carnus Village existed and that he went down there with his Spec War unit to train. And when they got there, DHS was doing door-to-door sweep training at Carnus Village. And when they asked, they actually got an attitude with these Spec War bubbas. And these aren't guys you want to mess with. And they were told to go pack sand. So, just so you know, even active duty military people, especially the Spec War community, know of the existence of this place, and they also know what its real purpose is. You know, Spec War may be using it to go overseas or whatever, but DHS certainly has no business overseas. So what are they doing? Why are they using it? These are things that we have to ask ourselves. And, you know, this isn't the only way that this goes down. They've been putting these control measures in place for a very long time. You know, we've had the war on drugs that's gone on, and we know that that is an absolute farce. Cannabis, according to Activist Post, has been illegal at the federal level since 1970, when Congress placed it under Schedule 1. It was supposed to be a provisional classification, but then, you know, not much was known about the plant. And in 1972, the National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse released a report favoring decriminalization of cannabis. Raymond P. Schaefer presented a report to Congress and the public entitled Marijuana, a Signal of Misunderstanding, favoring the end of marijuana prohibition and adopting other methods to discourage use, a la education. And, of course, that got thrown under the bus. And the Nixon administration sought to bury it. And let me tell you why. And this was leaked by a Nixon aide, John Ehrlichman. It says President Richard Nixon saw pot prohibition as a way to destroy the anti-war left. And this was Nixon tape number 3. You can also listen to that. Nixon convened this National Commission on Marijuana and Drug Abuse and wanted the justification for Schedule 1. He says, I want a goddamn strong statement on marijuana. That was on Nixon tape number 3. So can I get this out of a son of a being on domestic council? I mean, one on marijuana that just tears the ass out of them. I mean, you could just hear him say that. And this is what John Ehrlichman said. He said, you want to know what the real truth about this is? The Nixon campaign in 1968 and the Nixon White House after that had two enemies, the anti-war left and black people. He says, you understand what I'm saying? We knew we couldn't make it illegal to be either against the war or black, but by getting the public to associate the hippies with marijuana and the blacks with heroin, and then criminalizing both heavily, we could disrupt those communities. We could arrest their leaders, raid their homes, break up their meetings, and vilify them night after night on the evening news. So, did we know we were lying about the drugs? Of course we did. That's straight from the horse's mouth, my friends. And that's what this is all about. It's about control. It's about a war on people, a war on us. That was the sinister plan that was launched by Nixon, that was continued by each successive president up till now, and even the military-industrial complex and the pharmaceutical-industrial complex have been in on it because they just tend to make a ton of money on this. Think about it. Think about what the war on drugs does to benefit Big Pharma. Think about what the war on drugs does to benefit attorneys. How many congressmen, how many senators are attorneys? Are they going to go and upset their bubbas? Of course they're not. How many people are invested in big pharma? Millions of people. So they're not going to go and rock the boat because their bottom line might be affected, and in doing so, their share prices, and in doing so, their retirement. And there's no end in sight. On August 11, 2016, the DEA said that they're not going to reclassify marijuana, and it's going to remain a Schedule I drug, even though multiple government agencies have said and have scientific peer-reviewed studies that show clear medicinal benefit, even including the Department of Health and Human Services that owns a patent on cannabinoids. Unbelievable. Then you have civil asset forfeiture. That's a huge one. Think about that. It allows armed government thugs and cops to seize your property. That includes your house, your cash, your jewelry, your cars, without charging or convicting you with a crime, clearly violating the 5th and 14th Amendments. Now, in civil asset forfeiture cases, the government proceeds directly against your property. You don't need to be convicted of a crime, so criminal procedures don't apply. And because the forfeiture is against your property, you are a third-party claimant in related proceedings. And this has gone on to the tune of, in 2014 alone, the feds stole $5 billion in assets. That's more than $3.9 billion. That's more stolen by them than by criminals in the same year. So you had criminal elements stealing $1.1 billion. They stole $5 billion. Just to put it in perspective. Of course, we've expanded the police state using programs like the 1033 program. You have for-profit prisons. There's another industry that profits big on the war on drugs. And, of course, the destruction of the healthcare system. Destroy healthcare? Make it harder for people to do that? You put them in massive debt anytime they have a medical problem because that system is rigged? And then we can put them in debtors' prisons. It's unbelievable. And it doesn't stop there. LA Times here just reported that thousands of California soldiers are being forced to repay enlistment bonuses a decade after going to war. Unbelievable. Nearly 10,000 soldiers, many of whom served multiple combat tours, have been ordered to repay large enlistment bonuses and slapped with interest charges, wage garnishments, and tax liens if they refuse, after auditors revealed widespread overpayments by the California Guard at the height of the wars last decade. Investigations have determined that lack of oversight allowed for widespread fraud and mismanagement by the California Guard officials under pressure to meet enlistment targets. Let me ask you something. How is that the responsibility of the men and women in uniform that signed on the dotted line, that signed a contract for a set dollar amount to go and enlist and serve in battle? Why should they have to repay? That's the question. How come government goons aren't being held accountable for this? I mean, how do you do that? You sign a contract that says, okay, I will do X amount of time for this sign-on bonus. If the government does something that's wrong on their end, the troops shouldn't have to pay. The soldiers shouldn't have to pay. Why? This is our government does not work for us. Theodore Roosevelt said this, and I'm going to say this in closing. He said, political parties exist to secure responsible government and to execute the will of the people. From these great tasks, both of the old parties have turned aside. Instead of instruments to promote the general welfare, they've become the tools of corrupt interest, which use them impartially to serve their selfish purposes. Behind the ostensible government sits enthroned an invisible government, owning no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people. To destroy this invisible government, to dissolve the unholy alliance between corrupt businesses and corrupt politics, is the first task of the statement of the day. Now, all I can say is, if we want to fix this, trying to participate in a corrupt system is not the answer. And so what we need to do right now, folks, as hard as it may be, is to not participate and not consent. And then you'll see their true colors come out. I guarantee it. I'm Joe Joseph. This was your Daily News Brief, brought to you by thedailysheeple.com. Have a great day, everybody.